Thank you for joining Waterbreak. This episode is brought to you by Dusty Rose Tallow. To find out more about them, go to dustyrosetallow.com. Enjoy Waterbreak. Hey y'all, welcome to Waterbreak. It's good to be with you. This is Gabriel here, my wife Annie.
Hey guys.
Thanks for joining the show. Today we're going to talk about stress. I think the actual title we wanted to work with was Hacks for Surviving a Stressful Life. And my wife came up with this, maybe for a reason, maybe not. Please stay out of our marriage.
I don't know if we are like supremely qualified to talk about this or like really not.
Well, I think
I don't know which one it is.
That's part of I think the point is, God created the world in such a way, because a man fell, when sin entered the world, like stress is just now a natural part of life. Like everyone deals with stress.
Yeah.
Everyone deals with friction of some sort of challenge, and I think in some sense if you don't have stress, you're doing life wrong. If you don't have conflict in your life, and of course there's good conflict, righteous conflict, bad conflict, you're doing something wrong. We're living in a fallen world, and everything feels like it's going uphill in some sense. You're pushing uphill. Work's supposed to be difficult. You're supposed to toil. You're supposed to work hard, and your body's over time fall apart. Everything is comes with some level of stress. So I think
that's true.
Part of one of the reasons why this topic, I was excited about this topic, me and Annie get excited about topics for different reasons, is because it's a very, I think it's a very biblical thing to kind of think about stress and to process it well, and how you handle stress is something that I think really, draws you nearer to the Lord. And of course, stress comes out, as we'll get to. There's all sorts of practical ways to deal with stress, but the first relationship we should care most about is how we are giving this over to the Lord. How are we working out stress in our lives as it relates to Christ and His Word and the truth of what's going on that He commanded us. Any thoughts? Because I wanted to go into. I actually got a couple.
Okay. Go ahead.
So, stress is a fallen thing. Stress is tough. Stress is hard. It's something that we have to learn to deal with. And I'd probably venture, before the fall, I wonder what work was like. I think work was hard, but it wasn't cursed. I think work was a challenge, but it wasn't a negative thing. So somehow, some way, and with that might have been maybe some sort of kind of positive stress, because whenever before the fall, you're lifting, you're working, you're I don't know, raking leaves or whatever work was like before the fall. There had to be there's definitely a physical aspect to it, and with physicality comes just kind of natural body stress.
I've never even thought about that.
All right.
Never thought about that.
Go deep. So we're I think whenever I think about stress, this is where I go to Philippians chapter 4 verses 6 through 8. I'll just read 6 through 8, and it says, "Be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all comprehension, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ. Finally, brethren, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is right, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is of good repute, if there is any excellence and anything worthy of praise, dwell on these things." So this gets to, I think, a good description of a lot of what stress is. I think there's more we could add here, but it says, be anxious for nothing. So don't be worrying about anything. And the anxiousness there is, I think, it's bigger than just a worry. There's a load that comes with it. But it says, and actually this is one of your lists that you put here. Mm-hmm. But in everything, by prayer and supplications with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. So, as God brings like natural stresses in your life, or just part of the world's stresses in your life, what it means to be a human in some sense, you want to be able to. Humans are the kind of people that recognize that we aren't God. So if we recognize that we aren't God, then things happen, things enter into our lives. We also need to be the kind of Christians that know we need to give things over to God that God doesn't want us to carry. If you think of, stress is like a bunch of suitcases. Well, you can maybe carry a suitcase or two to the airport, but as those suitcases get stacked on you, it's going to inhibit your ability to function well. And I think most people maybe have just kind of a humming level of stress, a kind of stress that they can just kind of maybe carry 1 or 2 suitcases with them throughout the week. But some people get pretty debilitated because stress builds on them and it gets heavier and heavier, and it causes them to freeze, or it's difficult to make certain decisions, stuff like that. So, but God wants us to. He says specifically in Psalm 55, I think is what it is, where we need to cast our cares on the Lord, and then it follows up, and He will lift you up. So God calls us to cast our cares on the Lord. He calls us, Paul says here, be anxious for nothing. So how we deal with stress is super important. We don't want stress building in our lives. In fact, God doesn't want it building in your life. He wants you to be free of the emotional effects of what stress might happen in your life. Now, this is not to say that we don't want to work towards like some sort of easy life. Like I said earlier when I opened up, I said if you don't have stress in your life, you're doing something wrong. But this is to say that there's a certain way that God wants us to handle stress in such a way where we're leaning more on Him. Stress should cause us to lean more on Him. And as we give that stress over to Him, we're walking more and more in the line of the way Christ has called us to live. So it says, but in everything by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving. I want to highlight that. With thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. I would say one of the basic, fundamental dispositions towards God and towards the world is always thanksgiving. So as you give your stress over to God, as you give, through prayer and supplication, Paul says with thanksgiving, and he constantly uses the term thanksgiving or rejoice in such a way where it seems like that's our baseline emotion that we should be experiencing, and not just emotion, our baseline disposition towards God that we should be experiencing, whether we're sad, whether things are hard, whether Paul's being stoned with rocks, whatever's going on, our basic disposition in life should be thanksgiving. Again, whether you're sad or whether you're happy or whatever. And so Paul is saying that your anxiousness and the stress in your life, even as you're experiencing a very hard day or a very hard week or death in the family or something, or some bad news in your life, the baseline fundamental disposition you have should be a tone of thanksgiving in your prayer life and in how you handle the everyday stresses in your life. I think part of it is once you start, I think, start really working towards this kind of view of challenge in your life, a Thanksgiving view, a baseline Thanksgiving view, it already will begin to eliminate a lot of your stress in your life. And then, of course, you layer that with prayers and how God calls us to seek Him. This is how you deal with, I think, the fundamental issue of stress. Now, we're going to get into just a minute here a bunch of principles and a bunch of ideas and a bunch of ways of maybe eliminating and helping with stress, because I think there's all sorts of practical ways of doing this. I think prayer is the starting point. I think Thanksgiving is the starting point. But that's where we want to start. Last thing here on this is, we want to be able to handle the stresses in our lives. In fact, in one sense, one of my life verses when I was 22, I came here to Moscow, Idaho, and I remember reading Luke chapter 16, verse 11, where it says, "Be faithful in little and faithful in much," kind of thing. And the more faithful you are, the faithful in little, God promises He'll give you much. And the more that God gives you, oftentimes that comes with more responsibility, more stress, and more responsibility for more people, kids, employees, financial obligations, and so forth. So you want to be able to be the kind of Christian that can handle the small stress. So when the big responsibilities come, more stress is going to come with that. That you're actually thriving in the responsibilities God's given you, and it's not weighing you down and adding more suitcases to what you're carrying around in this world. So I want to start. The reason why I wanted to start here with talking about how to handle stress was because as Christians, God has His words for everything. All of Christ, all of His word for every area of life. And when we do our show, we aren't just trying to talk about just health. We're trying to talk about what's the foundation of health. What's the foundation of how we should look at and think about food? That's why you hear us kind of take our conversation with Joel Soliton. I'd love for you to go check that one out, because Joel is a solid Christian too, and you can hear us the fundamental debate we were having was over God's word, not even over how to think about our meat and stuff like that. So I wanted to start here with how we think about stress, because our starting point is so important. If you don't start in the right spot, and the way you look at it, if you're leaving a dock, if you're leaving you're taking a journey on a boat, and you're 2 degrees off from the dock already on your journey, well, by the end of your journey, you're going to be how many degrees off after 1,000 miles? How many degrees off after 3,000 miles? And so we want to start where we should start, so we aren't off, 2,000-3,000 miles off course by the time we get to talking about some of the practical things.
Yeah.
So that's why I wanted to start there. With the practical stuff, I think Annie made a list. I had a couple to it, but it's some
Oh, did you add to it?
I had like 1 or 2, but you had a bunch of stuff that I already had been thinking.
Well, this list is super practical, which
and in no particular order.
In no particular order, it's super practical. But I just listening to you talk, like I do, like when I think of, I'll just use myself as an example. We talk about stress all the time because it's such a problem, and I guess we
Are
should.
you talking about specifically with our clients or with our family? Between me and you?
On the show, but
yeah.
We're stressed. You're stressed. My clients, everyone's just stressed. And I want to be clear. Also, maybe we should define some terms here. I guess when I'm talking about stress here, I'm talking about any kind of stress in your life that could
whether you're like lifting
be
weights
a physiological stress. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So that totally includes mental stress, right? Just worrying, overthinking, stuff that anything you're thinking about, any kind of thought game about anything, whether it's made up or it's real, like you said, true hardships in life. Life stresses, stuff happening to you.
So physical, mental.
Not sleeping, eating crap, too much exercise, like all these things are, going through a divorce, going through, caretaking for your parents, like having a bunch of babies all in a row. I mean, they are all stressors. So I just want to be clear that, do you agree? Is that what you're talking about too? That's what I'm talking about. And it's hard because, we have to be naming these things right. But when you do that, it's hard because it's like everything. And it's like, how do you escape it? You know what I mean? But I like what you were saying, because you're like, well, yeah, it's good to get to the practical stuff, and we will, but as Christians, like, our mindset really matters. And maybe you said this, but I do think, when I think of myself, I just think, man, being grateful would do a lot for me. Like, being way better about being thankful and joyful about everything in my life, my work, housework, things that I see as inconveniences, things that are annoying, like just everything. Like, if I was able to have a lens of gratitude, that wouldn't take away all the stressors in my life. That doesn't change, I slept really poorly last night, or my mom is really sick, or my mom's not sick, but like, I'm using that as an example. Right. It doesn't change that, but it would take away a lot, and so I think that is a really good place to start. Just your, what is the right word? Almost your posture towards the Lord in terms of what He's given you. I think that would change a lot for a lot of us, and especially women. I just think we're especially bad at not worrying, not taking on burdens and issues and problems that we have no business taking on. Whether they're not ours, maybe you're supposed to be shouldering it, not us, or maybe it's like literally has nothing to do with us, and we're still taking it on.
It's even out of our control.
And it's like keeping you up at 2 a.m. You know what I mean? Like just having a really undisciplined, unhealthy thought life can do a lot of damage, and I think you can be that way. Like, I'm a good example of someone. I'm not a worrier. I don't tend towards that. I know a lot of women do. They tend towards worry. It's a fairly common. I'm not that way. I just am not naturally bent that way. I actually probably should, in some areas of my life, worry a little more, and I don't. But I can be incredibly ungrateful. My tendency can be to just be like, that. Like, that's my tendency, and I think. I mean, there's no way that doesn't. Obviously, it's not obedient to the Lord. That's not the way. That's not the kind of attitude we're supposed to be displaying throughout the day. But also, I mean, there's no way that does not add to negative health effects for me. Like, there's no way it doesn't. So, anyways, I just thought that was really good, and that was really helpful, because there's things we can control, things we can't control. But I think that could actually change a lot, and it could even change how we just process the things that we can't control, bad things happening to us, or things that we perceive as bad things, or the really slow traffic, or my gosh, my road rage alone, really.
In Moscow, Idaho.
I have road rage. And really, it's because I'm in a hurry because I can't be present and because I'm late.
Yeah.
I'm always late, and that's kind of my fault, you know? So, man, I mean, this is...
Well, and I think you're right about the definition thing. The other, I guess, addition to the definitional thing of talking about stress is like there's good stress and bad stress. And, you know, when we work out, we're lifting weights, we're purposefully stressing our muscles for good reasons.
Little less stress. Yeah, right. Good stresses, bad stresses. Hormetic stresses, as they call it in the biz. Yeah,
you know,
cold.
And a lot of the bad stresses
exercise.
are either just kind of God ordained, kind of a sovereign, you know, situation.
Sickness,
or
injury,
or you're doing it to yourself.
Or you do it to yourself.
You're being an idiot, or whatever.
Because that's the other part of the conversation, and this is probably the part about stress that we've talked about on the show so much. Is A, how much it can negatively impact your health, which it can. B, that we all need to be naming them rightly because it's a problem that we're not putting all of the things that count as stress on the stress shelf.
Yep.
And then C, that a lot of us are doing this to ourselves unnecessarily, right? Like saying yes to too many things, taking on too many things. So that's all a thing also. Like we talk about saying no,
but
quitting your job, things like that. And that factors in too, you know, I mean.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so I would argue
basically
whether it's a negative stress, a sovereign stress, or kind of a self-inflicted stress.
Self-inflicted stress.
This is why we start here, is because it all applies. It's like just, well if it's self-inflicted, pray and, you know, ask God to help and make sure that prayer is all with thanksgiving. I remember one of the things when I moved to Idaho and started going to Pastor Wilson's church, I remember him over the years preaching multiple sermons on different verses or different topics and on this. But the theme that would come back to me again and again is like, when something bad happens in your life, you need to give thanks to God. Like that's the hard reaction.
I'm really bad at that. Honestly,
you know, and so I think I would suspect when we talk about stress, I would expect most of our audience is probably thinking like, you know, the difficulties in life.
Yeah, right.
You know,
hardships.
The hardships.
Yeah, a really tough job, not getting along with your boss, getting fired, getting an injury, getting a sickness.
Right, and then part of sorting through this, and this is where I think a lot of our audience will be at too, sorting through this, like this is happening, this is a problem, or my kids are growing and I'm getting busier than ever. And then they start thinking about all the layering of stresses that compile over time.
Yeah.
That are maybe more, where our practical list will probably help with them as they
sort through it. So, I mean, hopefully the practicals could at least take your stress bucket from 100% full down to 70, 60% full.
Or to help you eliminate some of the stupid, you're doing it yourself
like
kind of stresses,
let's just at least control what we can control or make things better. But ultimately, none of this, I think the being just thankful is more important than anything, and would probably, in terms of what like net benefit, this is going to give you more net benefit. I mean, it is really funny. Do you remember that study? I know maybe this is going to turn into a long show, but remember me referencing that study? I cannot remember where I read it, but it was this study on cortisol, which, as you guys know, is your not your only, but your kind of most famous stress hormone. It gets released when your body is stressed, right? And it kind of gives you like a little burst of energy and kind of a get up and go kind of a thing. So they were taking these people, they were sedentary people, they were not runners, and they made them run as fast as they could around a track. Maybe they ran at 800. It was nothing abusive, but it wasn't pleasant, right? Yeah. Okay, and then they measured all their cortisol immediately after, and the cortisol was elevated, which is what happens when you exercise intensely. That's a pretty, established fact. And then they brought him in the next day, and they sat him down, and all they said was, I want you to think about, remember running around the track. So all they were doing was visualization of what they had just done a little bit earlier. So they all did that, and then they measured their cortisol, and it was just as elevated. Yeah. So I just thought that was so funny, and just so interesting that our thoughts really do affect our physiology. Yeah. And so this is just a side point that, what is going on in our brain, the kind of thoughts we allow ourselves to think, the kind of thoughts we allow ourselves to entertain, the kind of bad habits, the mental bad habits that we allow ourselves to kind of establish. It's not just that God knows our thoughts and he holds us responsible for what's in our heart, right? What's in our mind, what's in our heart, but it actually will affect your health. And I just think that's really interesting. So he does, when he says cast your cares upon him, he's really is looking out for not just your heart, but your physical health. And I just think we're so far, the American way, the American lifestyle is so far away from that, it's just so bad. But anyways.
Well, and I think that study also gets at to like this is why healthy marriages are so important, is because, a husband can come home if he doesn't have a healthy marriage with his wife. He comes home and then immediately her probably cortisol levels jump because
guys,
and this can go both ways.
Don't be a cortisol spike just walking through the door.
Right. So
if anyone in our marriage is that though, it's me.
I started with a man.
You walk through the door and your wife's just so crabby.
Help!
Yeah, no,
Help!
I'm more pleasant now. But I remember when the kids were little. I remember he would walk through the door and I would just be like,
because all the kids would run and jump on me, and they were happy I was there, and my wife.
And I'm just like, your hair, you're just like this like feral, what do they call it in the memes, like raccoon-looking person. Okay. But I remember telling you back then, I remember being like, I wasn't like this all day. I remember just being like, I'm like this now.
I was excited
I was doing really good.
I was excited for you to come
most
home
of the day, but it's like the witching hour, that dinner time when you're trying to make dinner, and then they walk through the door and you're just
crazy.
Like, oh, like I'm angry at you, like it's your fault, even though it wasn't your fault. But that's I was the cortisol spike, I think.
Okay, let's get into some practical things here.
Okay, I wrote a bunch down, but I think we can go through them quickly.
Yeah.
Some maybe we can spend more time on it.
None of these are in like any particular order, so we're gonna kind of go through them.
No, these are very, I think, mostly like practical helps, hacks for all of us who are just living a really stressful life. And like you said, if you're being a productive person, you're kind of stressed out. Like it's just life is a lot. You cut out one thing, you add something else in. If you're walking around and you have a job and you have kids, you got a lot of stressors in your life. You just do. There's no way around it. So anyways.
Okay. So number one, this is number one. You wrote this one down. You said you started taking your computer everywhere you go.
Guys.
Okay, which makes me nervous because now you have your phone and your computer with you wherever you go.
I know. I haven't lost them yet. Yeah. This has been a game changer for me, and I don't know why I didn't. Sometimes you're just so stupid. I'm like 40 years old, and I just now learned something, and I'm just like, wow, I could have done that. I could have been doing this a long time. But that's what this is like. I just have started taking my computer everywhere I go. So I just have like a big mom purse. You know what I mean? Just fits everything. Put my computer in there. It doesn't matter if it's one of those days where I'm going to go to a coffee shop and actually do work. It's just a day. I go to the gym. I go to the grocery store. I go to the orthodontist with my kids. I do school pickup because this is the thing.
There's always 5 minutes.
There's always 5 minutes. There's 5 minutes here. There's 5 minutes there. You're sitting in the parking lot. You're waiting for your kids. They're taking forever because they're really slow putting their football gear on. Totally making this up. Just kidding. Cash is so slow at putting his football gear on.
Yes.
You go to an orthodontist appointment. They say it's at 2:20. They don't even get them in until 2:40. Rather than sitting there and being full of rage because it's just a waste of your time. You know what I mean? And I know I shouldn't be full of rage, but I was full of rage because I hate wasting time. I don't have a lot of it. You know what I mean? So it's just like, well, you could have just told me that it was going to be at 2:40 when you said it was. But if you have your computer, you can just get stuff done. You can be okay with it. You can feel like it's not a waste of time. I will do computer work in the car while I'm waiting, and it has just helped me to be so much more efficient, to get so much stuff done that's been hanging over my head, and to not feel like I'm wasting time, and it helps me have a better attitude. So I take it to the gym. If a client's late, if somebody cancels, I'm not just like, well, great. There goes another hour. I have my computer, I get stuff done. So I program for the next week, whatever. I mean, there's always things to do. So anyways, that for me, game changer. Take it with me.